It's a whiteboard. It's been 2 years of a whiteboard. And myself and other leaders, Didier Rialt in France, and Barentios in South America, and Dr. Chetty in South Africa, Dr. Zelenko in Monroe, New York, really just kind of independent doctors have stepped forward and basically said, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to study it the best we can with no funding, with no grants. Listen, I'd love to do $500 million randomized trials. I'm very capable in doing so. I tried. I brought ideas to the National Institutes of Health and the FDA. No dice. No dice. For COVID-19, the answer is no. And even with treatments that have made the grade, they've made emergency use authorization. We've had bamlanivimab, we've had carasivimab and indimab and sotorivimab. Now we have the combined Pfizer product, and we have molnupiravir by Merck. To this day, they have not been shown the light of day, and they've received very little fanfare, very little review, almost no public health messaging, no billboards up on the highways. But we see at the same time an overwhelming and incessant and relentless in-your-face campaign for vaccination, even before the vaccines finish clinical trials. It started in October of 2020. I recorded actually a CVS recording. I was trying to get a drug refilled, and it said, I was stunned. I said, wait, the vaccines haven't come out. They're already advertising them. You can't advertise a product before they're even, but we didn't even know if they're going to make it through clinical trials. But the messaging was strong. Actually, the messaging started in the academic literature in April or May that the answer was going to be a vaccine. And all we heard through the news cycle, if you were to turn on CNBC and listen to the financial report each day, they said, well, we're just waiting for the vaccine to come. Yep, the vaccine will come, and that's going to save corporate America. They were interviewing CEOs. Well, how are you going to roll out the vaccine? How are you going to get all your employees vaccinated? That was before the vaccines even came out. That was before we knew they even worked.
CVS confirmed that they were advertising their intended involvement in the vaccine rollout in October 2020. Walgreens did not immediately respond.
I mean, this is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Now, in terms of, let's stick to therapeutics for a moment still. Where, presumably, somewhere in the world, I want to talk about prophylaxis a little bit as well, but somewhere in the world, people are doing therapeutics. And you mentioned a few places that you're collaborating with. Somewhere in the world, there's a government that is, promoting therapies.
There have been countries from the very beginning that said, listen, if we think it's going to work, we're going to use it. And one of the things that certainly in America, and probably outside the world, you've noticed is suddenly the outside world, outside the United States, doesn't exist. We see almost no reports around the world on anything, not just COVID-19. We haven't seen any humanitarian crisis stories. We haven't seen any uprisings. There's always some political or international grind going on.
A little bit on Russia lately.
Oh, yeah. A tiny, weensy bit. Mm-hmm. Normally, the news cycle just perseverates on the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, or perseverates on some type of thing with the ex-Iron Curtain, or something in Russia, or perseverates on, with COVID-19 in the last 2 years. There's been a retraction, and it's just the focus is just in the United States, right in front of us. Almost no outside window, none. It's very notable, actually. And what's happened with COVID-19, zero. There is zero window to the outside world. So, as they're handing out treatment kits through the Caribbean, people get sick with COVID-19, they have a little treatment kit with some oral drugs, typically an antiviral and a steroid. They're handing out treatment kits in states in India, for instance, and elsewhere. No word of that, no mention. You actually kind of don't even see that that's happening. It's hard to imagine. I live in Texas. You can fly 2 hours south of us, and it's wide open. In fact, I've just published a paper with authors from Honduras, where the medicines are flowing. It's enormously successful. So when we look at where this is done in South America, and Central America, and Mexico, India, anywhere where there has been an early oral drug approach, there has been success in terms of COVID-19. And now more recently, what's very fascinating, is anywhere where there's any attention to decontamination in the nose and the mouth with direct virucidal therapy, there's been stunning results. There's now over 9 clinical studies, one really key randomized controlled trial that's come out of Bangladesh. Chowdhury is the first author, recognizing the fact that the virus is in the air. People breathe it in, it settles in the nose, and it begins to replicate. And it has to get to a certain threshold and overcome the other organisms in the nose and overcome our own immune system to become a clinical infection. So there's about a 3 to 5 day window to actually zap the virus directly. And while the entire world has been focusing on masks, which can't stop the organism from coming in, typical mask, by the way, mask expert Mr. Petty estimates as an engineer that 18% of the air goes around the mask. So it's obvious, no matter how good the mask is, the air goes around it. It's not going to work. Not only that, the virus is too small for the masks to filter out. But while the focus has been publicly on masks, or even more inanely on hand sanitizer, people are there's hand sanitizer everywhere in the airport. I'll fly home and people are using hand as if it's spread by the hand. It's spread in the air. The hands have nothing to do with it. The hands have nothing to do with it. So there's been this illogical, unsupported use of, the one thing that hand sanitizer have taught us is almost anything kills the virus. And the same thing is true in the nose. Almost anything kills in the virus. In the Chowdhury protocol, they use dilute povidone iodine, which ophthalmologists use this. It's called betadine. They use it in a dilute form for eye drops, so it works as an anti-infective. Ophthalmologists use this years ago. Sinus doctors have used it to treat sinusitis for years. Dentists have used dilute povidone iodine. They've used dilute hydrogen peroxide. Dentists have actually used dilute sodium hypochlorite or dilute bleach, just a few drops in some water and gargle and spit it to actually kill other viruses that cause gingivitis, Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus. So there's a whole literature of direct virucidal therapy for the nose and mouth. Well, Chowdhury applied it in this randomized trial of 606 individuals, and it was stunning. It dropped the PCR positivity rate. It just crashed it after 3 days, markedly reduced any chances of being hospitalized or worse. They literally shut the virus off in the nose. And the results were stunning. It became available early in 2021. Doctors started to adopt it. We started communicating with dentists. We started making handouts, putting it into our patient guide. And to this day, the lead approach to COVID-19 is get going by taking dilute povidone iodine. We're talking about half a teaspoon in a shot glass of 1.5 cc's of water, taking a bulb syringe over the sink, squirt it up in the nose, sniff it back, spit it out, do that twice, gargle with the rest, and you basically are done. Done. You can do that twice a day preventively. I tell patients you go out to church or congregate settings, you're still susceptible, do that as a part of hygiene. Patients' chronic sinus infections get better with this. They breathe better, and they markedly reduce their risk of developing COVID-19, supported by multiple studies. And then in acute treatment, we do what Chowdhury does every 4 hours. And it's amazing we can take what's going to be a potentially severe illness and make it a mild illness. Now, I personally had COVID-19 in 2020. So before this research was done, I had no knowledge of using local virucidal therapy. And I can tell you, I remember day by day feeling the virus in my nose and sinuses multiply, headache, fever, congestion. And it was obvious that's where the problem was. And then it invaded my lungs. Then it makes perfect sense. I could have zapped it there and given myself a milder illness. So we're capitalizing on one message that could come out of this. This is available, freely available all over the world. A bottle of povidone iodine, 10% povidone iodine, costs between $5 and $10 in any online store. It's widely available. Every household should have it. Only those with hyperfunctioning thyroid problems, which are rare, or those who have an iodine allergy could go to a backup, which would be dilute hydrogen peroxide. And if the direct nasal wash is too much, they can use a nebulization. The general principle is if it stings, it's too strong. The virus is easily killed. So the direct therapy in Bangladesh, a country of 160 million individuals, has basically crushed COVID-19. They had no Delta wave. They basically handled it.